Hey guys, it's Ken here. Was going to do a video today. Um, Going through a bit of a depressive spell, I can be honest about that. But I had a thought, and I wanted to, it gave me a reason to get up and put some clothes on. I assure you, I have pants on. Um, but it gave me an excuse to get off the couch and do something. So I'm going to just chat a little informally about an issue that I've had in the past, and that you've probably had or may have had. I don't want to assume. Um, just being embarrassed about being a writer, about what you write, about sharing, you know, even if it doesn't seem like it's personal to you, it can be kind of embarrassing because you think people are going to judge you. You think people are going to make fun of you or look down on you because of being a writer or wanting to write. And some people will. Some people do. They have. But I just wanted to riff on that for a little bit because I had a hard time with it when I was younger, and a lot of people who knew me close, I didn't have a ton of, close friends, but I had my brothers, my parents, uh, a few classmates and friends that, I talked to about it, about being a writer, and, and they knew about it, and they supported me. I don't want to say that no one's, supported me. They definitely did. Um, I had great English teachers. I'm so thankful for them um, throughout my life. That they're the main reason. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't have written, but their support and information they've shared has been vital, and I think about it all the time. But I mean, even my teachers, I would write things that were, I wouldn't say personal to me, but they were things that I was interested in. I was a big King Arthur, Arthurian legend, a buff back then, a big Civil War buff, history, Egyptology. Like when I was in high school, I had a background in some of that thanks to my father, just making us aware of different things, different cultures. So by the time, we learned about it in school, I at least had a basis of that knowledge. So I was thankful for that. But even like when I would write about the King Arthur stories or legends, or whether it was fiction or nonfiction, usually it was fiction or a version of the Arthurian legends, something medieval. Um, even with the support of my teachers, I would get very embarrassed about sharing it, about them knowing it. I knew they were going to read it when I turned it in, but that was somewhere, out of my view. I didn't have to see them read it. My teacher would walk around and look over my shoulder and watch me as I was writing, and I would just freeze. I would actually get angry because I didn't. It put me on the spot. It made me feel really seen in a way I didn't want to be. I wanted my work to be seen in its completion, away from me, not read while I was in process. But and even though there were things I like, things that to this day, for my age, that I'm still proud of, um, I was still embarrassed about people reading them, about people seeing me, about people knowing that I was a writer for the most part. I mentioned before that the three novels that I have self-published are fantasy fiction. It was ideas that I had had, kind of a amalgamation, amalgamation. I don't know. I can't think of words some days. This is one of those days. It was a combination of a lot of ideas: King Arthur legend, Viking stuff, just regular medieval and Middle Ages stuff, a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Even though I've never actually played Dungeons, I would love to try it. If anybody knows any gaming groups, I'd love to try it out. But so I had this idea that became the Legend of Levnar series, and I had been writing it for years. I mean, I'm in essence, I'm still writing it because I've got 3 more books to go. Um, but I wrote, it first was a short story, then it became what I thought was going to be a novel. It ended up like 20 some pages, and then I started writing the actual novel as an adult about 3 times before I finished it, and I just didn't want to show it to anybody. I was just embarrassed as a 20-something-year-old writing what I considered to be like childish story, even though they weren't. Like, I feel like it's how people judge them. And even now, recently, when I published them, I had people that were acquaintances, maybe not friends, but people I knew that from school or work or wherever, and they were kind of surprised. First, there's a little bit of like, oh, you've published something, like, okay, cool, like that's a great way to to start the conversation. But then you see their reaction after that, if it's going to be like, so what's it about? And then you say, well, it's like a fantasy fiction thing, Middle Ages kind of stuff, medieval. And then you get that, oh, so it's like Harry Potter. So it's like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. And no disrespect to them. I love the Hobbit book. Um, for whatever reason, the Lord of the Rings movies, I know they're amazing, but I couldn't get into them. I just have a hard time sitting down for epic movies anymore. Um, but yeah, I was never into Harry Potter. So when I get compared to stuff like that, it kind of bugs me, but I understand why people go to that. Those are the main ones in the zeitgeist, I guess. I mean, for the last 20 some years. Um, but it made me, it kind of, I don't want to say hurt my feelings, but it let me know that those are people that maybe I can't trust with the full amount of my writing, and shouldn't allow their reactions to affect the way I feel about the writing, but it does. As I've gotten older, I published those 3 books around the same time that I had my daughter, and honestly, I do believe that it was a perfect storm of life changes, of being happy, maybe for the first real time in my life, like, and I was being productive as a writer, as a family person, as a future husband. I wasn't married at the time. I am now. Like, I feel like that was peak for me. That was where like everything was coming together, and I got the sensation of, I don't care what other people think anymore. And that's when I became very more, much more open about being a writer. Also, I was starting to find more friends or acquaintances online through writing groups where people were sharing stuff, and it helped me free up that ability to talk about it, to reach out for opinions without feeling personally attacked. I know if you give your writing to somebody and you're really wrapped up in it personally, it can feel like a personal attack when they judge your work. The best way to get over that is honestly to do it more. You just want to be a better writer. So, and to not always take everyone. I did a little video about this a while ago, I think, about judging the criticism based on where it's coming from. Consider the source. Yeah, so I'm a little off topic now, but just I started getting to the point where I could talk about it to different people, and if they reacted in a standoffish way, then fine, then I'm not going to talk about it with you anymore, and that's not going to hurt my feelings. But even to this day, I still sense a little bit in myself. It's a shame because I am so proud of the 3 books that I wrote, and I'm looking forward to writing the other 3 once I've got book 4 plotted out all the way. But at the same time, I almost feel embarrassed talking about it. I think because there was such a time difference between when I thought up the idea and plotted out the idea to when I actually executed the idea and published it. So it almost feels like a different person, which on one hand you would think would make it easier to talk about because it's not, it's not me today. 2026, Ken did not write those books. And reading them now, I can see things that I may have done that I would probably do differently now. But that's what we want to do. We want to write something for its time and then improve on that for the next project. We shouldn't all be judged by the first thing we write, or we'd all suck. So in the last couple of hours, I've been thinking about, like, well, how do you get over that embarrassment? That, I don't want to call it shame, because it's not like you've done something wrong, but there are people that you just aren't going to take to what you've done, and they're not going to react the way you want them to. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't put it out there, because you will have fans. I said it before, I believe, that when I outlined the Legend of Levnar series, I didn't want it to be The Hobbit. I didn't want it to be Lord of the Rings. I didn't want it to be, at the time, Harry Potter didn't exist to me. I mean, it might have been written, but I did not know about it. When I came up with these ideas, this was the early 90s. And they've changed. They've morphed into something, more mature, more presentable for mature audience. But I didn't know those things existed, and I wanted to create something that was, medieval, Middle Ages fantasy that people that may not normally read fantasy books would be interested in, that they could read it and see the lesson, see the moral, and without being preachy, but there's a point to it. It isn't just dragons and wizards. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I love me some good dragons and wizards once in a while, but there is points to them. The stories, I've tried to make them personal. I tried to make them stand alone while still fitting into a greater story. So I am proud of what I did because I wanted it to be for people who didn't normally read these things. That is a double-edged sword, because I did find a lot of people, if I told people I wrote a fantasy fiction book with knights and wizards and magic and castles, you'd probably assume, and I could be wrong, maybe it's just me, would probably assume that your readership would be young men, quote unquote nerds, larpers, whatever. No disrespect to any of them, because I totally would have did that if I knew people back then. I totally would have. But actually, most of the feedback I got, a lot of the books I sold, were to middle-aged and younger women. And a lot of the good feedback I got was from women, females, because I don't know why. I wish I knew why, but I try to make the stories personal. I try to make the stories not just be fantasy fiction, but to be about people. And I think I succeeded in doing that in these books. So a lot of the feedback I got wasn't necessarily from who I expected, but it was what I was hoping for. So there's a lot I can be proud of, I think, and I shouldn't be ashamed. And that leads me to one more point. I'm talking about my fantasy fiction novels, but I'm gonna pivot, at least from personal experience, to my screenwriting specs that I've written. None of my screenwriting specs have been particularly about me personally, about my life, my history, but in almost every one of them, there's a conversation or a thought or a theme or a story that's very personal. And sometimes those are the ones, at least in that scene, you're worried if it's almost too specific. Like, if I write this, they're gonna know I experienced it. They're gonna know that this is me, that this isn't that character. It's something that I'm putting from my life into this story because it relates. Don't do it because it relates to the story or the character. Don't just throw in, your life for no reason. But when you make something specific, when you make something that you've experienced, that you felt, that you know of, they say write what you know, which can be taken different ways, but there is some truth to it. Write something personal, something that has feeling. And if it causes you to be uncomfortable, if it causes you a little bit of maybe embarrassment, then you're probably on the right track. And that's the truth. I've written a few things that were more or less straight up dramas. They do have a little fantasy, maybe a little horror aspects to them, because that's the kind of stories that I tend to write. But there's very personal, very individual, very specific things. And that's what you want. You want something that when somebody reads it, they may not know it came from your life specifically, but they're gonna know that they probably weren't gonna get that aspect, that story, that line of dialogue from someone else. They're going to get that through this story that you wrote, because it's your voice, it's your experience, it's your perspective. And that's what people want. That's what, when you're reading something, and I think this is maybe the biggest difference between my writing now and my earlier writing. I could write a story before. I knew 3-act structure before I knew the name 3-act structure. Like, I've watched enough TV and seen enough movies and watched, read enough books to know how to structure a story, beginning, middle, end, have a couple twists, you know, a good strong ending, good strong beginning. That's really what it boils down to. But the flavor is the voice. That's the personal. That's the specific stuff that makes our story different than somebody else's story, or in my case, my story now different than a story I wrote in the past. Don't be embarrassed if you can fight it, and if you are embarrassed, fight through it. Find your people. Find people who support you. I've been fortunate that where I've never really had a mentor or somebody who's really helped me on the business end or in the industry. I have had a lot of great teachers and a lot of great support. And if people do come at you with, you know, like you should be embarrassed, or that they scoff at you or they laugh at you, you can't let it hurt you. I mean, it will, but you can't let it stay, because there's too many people. I look at my Facebook friends list and all that, it's like 600 and some. Most of them have never read any of my stuff, and that's okay. But the people that have, they've read it, they've enjoyed it, they've reached out to me, and those things mean a lot. So let that, I don't want to say embarrassment, because it becomes something else. It just becomes like being seen, and it's whether or not you want to be seen or not. When I was younger, I did not want to be seen. I wanted to be against the wall, in the back, quiet. But I had stories, and you know, it's that back and forth. Like, I wanted to tell stories, I wanted to talk, I wanted to be more vocal. But at the same time, I did not want people judging me because of it. And I think we just have to fight through that and tell our stories, because it'll help us and it'll help other people. And in some ways, it might be a little selfish to keep these stories to ourselves, but we got to make them personal. And when you're feeling that fear, that shame, that embarrassment of sharing a particular line or a character or something, it's probably because it's real. It's probably because it's authentic. It's probably because that's where your voice is. That's where you're coming from. And that's what the reader is going to resonate with. Resonate? Resonate. So, yeah, sorry that this went on a little longer than I thought, as most of my videos do. But it's not uncommon to have that fear or that embarrassment about your writing or being a writer. But once you get over that hump and you can tell people eye to eye, I'm a writer. I wrote, I write, I will write. I have published. Maybe some of you have published things. I have writing on the internet. Why don't you take a look? Like, when you show embarrassment about it, they'll treat you that way. Like, oh, okay, he's not taking it seriously. If you come at it as, dare I say, a professional, as an artist, I don't like using the word artist for writing, but it applies in some cases. They'll treat you that way. If you take it seriously, most people take it seriously, and if they don't, then their opinion didn't matter, because they weren't somebody that you were probably trying to write to anyway. So share that personal information, be specific. I'm not saying personal information like give your life story in every book, but there's little moments that you'll find, at least I have. It's usually like one conversation per project where two characters will be talking, and it resonates. And maybe it resonates because that was the whole point that I was trying to make all along and just never realized it. That this was why this story was in my head in the first place. This is why this story, I wanted to share it. And now I'm at that point in the story where that experience comes out, and it makes everybody more authentic. It makes everything more real. It hits harder because it's not cookie cutter. It's not something from a beat sheet. It's something from your life. It's something from your brain that you've experienced or created, and it hits close to home, and you're afraid to share it because then they're going to know it came from you. That's what they want. They want you. They want to know you and your writing and how you see the world. And it doesn't matter if they agree with you, but they'll feel it, and that's what makes it real. So I hope y'all are having a good day. I hope that that helps you. If you're stuck, admitting to yourself or to others that you're a writer, don't be afraid to tell people you've written. You might find a new friend or a new fan. Have a good one.